Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. Wasn't that exciting? What a wonderful program, and congrats to Fred Kaufman for being on Nature for 40 years. You can barely imagine it. But right now, we're going to say hello to Dawn Clancy, who's relatively new. That's a perfect comparison. Dawn Clancy is with the Norwood News, a reporter with the Norwood News. Nice to see you, Dawn. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Dawn, so let's do a little background. People, the Bronx haven't met you. Maybe they've been reading what you've been writing in the Norwood News. How'd you get here? What's your background? How'd you get to the Norwood News and your interest in journalism? Let's talk about that.
I started out writing nonfiction essays, like freelance work, and then from doing that, writing mostly about my own life, I decided I was tired of talking about myself. I wanted to talk about other people. So I decided to go back to school for journalism. I just graduated in May of 2021. While I was in school,
from where, you need to say you graduated from?
Columbia's graduate journalism program.
I didn't want you to leave that out because, it carries some weight.
I hope so. It was a very expensive program.
I'm sure.
No, but while I was there, I interned at the Norwood News. The first story I did for them was the presidential election, November 2021. And I just stayed on from there. And now I'm getting to know the Bronx. I'm getting to know the neighborhood. I'm just really grateful that I've been able to kind of get my teeth into the journalism world through the Bronx.
Tell me about why you are interested in journalism. What drives you? What made you say, hey, you know what? I want to do this.
Because I'm really interested in telling people's stories, and I really don't like it when power takes advantage of people. That really gets under my skin. So I want to be able to tell people's stories. I want to be able to tell it like it is. I want to be able to read between the lines and say, hey, they're saying this, but it really means this. And I also should mention as well that I actually traveled quite a bit. I lived in London, England for 3 years, and I traveled quite a bit. And as I got to know different people and different cultures, I was like, you know what? There's a whole world out there of other people who have other stories, who are impacted, and their lives are impacted in ways that mine will never be. It's not the same. And that's what drives me.
You wanted to tell that story. I have to tell you that for me, being in the Bronx and doing what I do, the motivation is the same. I always tell people I feel like the Bronx is still undiscovered territory. There's just so much here. So on that note, there is a very important issue that you wrote about that I do want to get to, but tell me about what it's, I always love hearing what somebody from the outside who's coming in to cover the Bronx, what's it been like? What's your understanding of the borough of the Bronx right now? And what's it like to cover news in the borough of the Bronx?
Well, first, I will say that it's a bit frustrating because there are so many stories in the Bronx. Oh. Unfortunately, I'm just one person. I can only do so much, but that's the first thing. And the second thing I will say
I can relate to that, by the way, extensively. I promise you.
I feel like, there's just so many stories and not enough time. But as an outsider coming in, I just see a lot of injustice. I never understood, the level of noise in the Bronx. You go into the South Bronx, you walk around, these people are living under these conditions. I do kind of feel like it is the borough that gets kind of swept to the side. COVID shined a really bright spotlight on different things that were going on in the Bronx that, aren't fair in many ways to many people. And now that COVID isn't over, of course, but I feel like we're coming out of it a little bit. Maybe we're heading towards normal. It's like, well, what's going to happen? Right. People wrote extensively about all these problems. Well, now what's going to happen?
It was interesting, and we know that what happened in Elmhurst, in Queens, and in other places, when the original numbers came out, and that would be at the beginning of the pandemic in March of 2020, the Bronx didn't show any numbers. And I guess you could look at that and say, well, okay, the problems are in Elmhurst, Queens, or in Brooklyn, or wherever they are. I said, if you're talking about, people with diabetes and asthma and other issues as being, the draw for this horrible virus, it's only a matter of time. And sure enough, it was only a matter of time till the Bronx unfortunately caught up and in some cases surpassed some of the other places. Let's talk a little bit about coming out of COVID, and that was what you wrote specifically about for the Norwood News, and that was the notion of outdoor dining. I actually think that the outdoor dining concept was one of the things that was a winner coming out of COVID. Talk to me a little bit about Community Board 7 and what their decision was like. There are issues that would say, well, maybe we shouldn't continue outdoor dining, but the people in the community board seem to like it.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't want to be too black and white about this, but in Community Board 7, it's kind of half and half. You have half of the community board that's very business oriented and believes that outdoor dining will allow restaurants to continue to thrive in the borough. It'll make neighborhoods more vibrant. You have people sitting outside having coffee, having cocktails. It brings a different energy to the area. That's one side of the argument. The other is people who live in these areas are just like, look, I don't want that potential noise waking me up in the middle of the night when I have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to work.
Yep, and I'll add one thing as a Bronxite who owns a car, it doesn't help parking. I mean, yeah, they take up all that space.
Mm-hmm.
But Community Board 7, the vote, I guess this was the Housing, Land Use, and Economic Development Committee, and they said that they like this idea. They voted in a way for development and economic development over some of these other issues.
Yes, they did. They voted. It was a 3-vote majority. They voted in favor of providing the Department of City Planning with a letter of support, because they're just kind of going around now trying to get support from all the community boards for this permanent option for restaurants. But yeah, they voted in favor of it. But Community Board 8, if I didn't go to their meeting
in the article. Yes,
they didn't. They didn't. They think it's premature. They want more time to think about it. They want more time to ask questions. I mean, it makes sense.
It's a very difficult question because I mean, I know for myself, it's like last summer I said, "Wow, what a revelation! It's so much fun. It's so nice to be outdoors. More people are out. It certainly increases capacity for restaurants who now can do some indoor dining as well." I mean, it sounded like win-win. But then, if I'm driving on Amsterdam Avenue and I want to have some dinner and park my car, good luck. I mean, it's
Right.
like it's not happening, and certainly in Bronx neighborhoods, it's not happening. So I understand. Do you think? I'm just wondering. Do you think that there's a compromise somewhere? Limit hours, deal with noise. I mean, the parking is going to be a big issue because the structures are going to be there and it takes up space. You can't remove them. Do you think there's a way to deal with that? I don't know. I'm just asking.
I don't know
She's
either.
shaking her head. No.
I really don't. I mean, you're going up against, the need for economic development, against residents, community who live in the area that, don't want their quality of life issues to be a casualty of this permanent option. I think I think the city is really going to have to put a lot of attention into the plan that they have to inspect these outdoor spaces. And I think it's going to have to be on a case-by-case basis. You might have a restaurant over here who's doing a great job of respecting their neighbors. Then down the block, you might have a restaurant that is there's garbage, there's extra noise. The city is going to have to crack down on that. You asked me earlier about what, coming into the Bronx, something that I noticed. And I will say that I don't think the people of the Bronx are listened to enough. Don't think they're listened to. They're not. So when you
get an
ask
argument
me,
from me, that's for darn sure.
I mean, there have been times where I've just wanted to walk around the streets and be like, just pick a random person off the street and be like, hey, did you hear about this new climate bill? Did you hear about this? Did you hear about that? Because I just want to know, because it just seems like the people are left out of the equation. It's like, wait a minute, these people live here.
Yeah, and the thing which I talk about all the time, 1.4 million people. I mean, the city of Boston has 600,000 people, and they have network television and they have daily newspapers, plural. We just have a couple of weeklies, and 1.4 million people are underserved in terms of media. So what do you have on your docket for next? Are you working on something in particular, or do you have like a goal of what you'd like to write something about?
I mean, like I said in the beginning, there are so many stories in the Bronx. I hope to be able to get more acquainted with the boroughs so that I can find them. I mean, I'm talking about, getting in between the cracks in the sidewalk and finding those stories. I know with the latest flooding issue, there were people living in basement apartments in the Bronx that were really impacted by that. That could be an interesting story to pursue.
And
There's also
certainly the just on that note, the daylighting of Tibbetts Brook, which could alleviate some of the issues, the water issues on the Deegan. I mean, that's among the myriad of them. We don't have a lot of time left, but I do want to thank you, and I want to urge you, because you are just the kind of person we want to have around our borough at the Bronx, and urge our friend Sheila to say, okay, let's get Dawn out there as often as possible,
I'm ready.
because this is obviously a lot going on. So we will wish you good luck, and thank you for joining us this evening. Boy, I'm looking forward to. I'll feed you some stories. We got some ideas of things that are going on, and we certainly appreciate your work already, and I hope to look for you more in the Norwood News. It's Dawn Clancy, reporter for the Norwood News. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
So that'll do it. We thank Fred Kaufman from the TV show Nature. We thank Dawn Clancy from the Norwood News for joining us. And you know what happens here on BronxNet Television next week? We'll be back with more. So we'll see you then. Good night.